All right, guys, it's that time again. Tucker Carlson had a segment at the end of his show last night. I wish he had followed up on the first segment he had a couple, I guess that was a couple months ago at this point, about UFOs. And he was basically touting, promoting, within his right, it is an interesting subject to him, you know. I mean, if he was into sports, he might be talking about something about sports. But this is his bag. I get it. It's interesting. I like that it's going a little more mainstream. And he's promoting this documentary, essentially, called The Phenomena, where it's got interviews from all these different people. And I don't think this was anything... It was not nearly as exciting as perhaps Tucker thought it was. The documentary group that's making it is called 1091 Productions. Now, or they're at least the production releasing it. I have absolutely no problem with 1091. They make a lot of really fun stuff. They make a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of interesting supernatural type things. They have one on Mothman. They got one on, let's click here. They did the Mystery 411, or no, Missing 411. That's what it was, right? They did the documentary for that. Oh, see, it's blasting right there. And you can see they do a lot. They do a lot of random stuff, and they also do things. You know, like I guess this is a comedy special. I mean, they do all kinds of things. I have no problem with them, but they are fundamentally entertainment. This is not a research group. This isn't a, some sort of group of ex-government officials or skeptics who got together and or let's just say UFO researchers got together to make a video. They're just publishing stuff that's fascinating. And the Phenomena, it probably is going to be really interesting and exciting to a lot of people. But for those of us who have followed the UFO stuff and taken the really deep dives, particularly the people who were looking for this before YouTube did the purging, like me, it's old hat. There's nothing I saw with people they were interviewed, the stories they were telling, that was new. There was something he featured on Tucker Tucker featured that had to do with them, like, here's metals that aren't made on this earth. Okay, who else says that? You say that, but has it been tested? Has it been independently verified? Do you have a there's a lot more to that. I mean, I find Bob Lazar's story and his stuff about Element 118 and its isotopes. I find that a lot more interesting, but I also find it interesting that people, since he claims to have the stuff, haven't said, okay, let's, get a little bit of it and take a look at it. Bob Lazar is a little toxic, and I don't think that's necessarily his fault. But I find that story, we all know these stories, and the Phenomena doesn't seem to be bringing to the floor anything new. Let's just say there's the trailer is just a lot of people saying, I'm saying it's not disclosed. Oh, the people have the right to know. It's like you say that all the time. The scope of what the documentary is going to be covering is everything from Roswell to at the F-18s, which is the recent stuff, to missile tests, to stories by British children. You can't have all these things in one documentary. If you're doing the documentary on what is the scale of the UFO stuff in terms of what's it all about? What are the different what are the skeptic communities? What are the believer communities? What are the watchers? How is it in main media, and where do these stories come from? Yeah, you can have the whole scope, but I got news to you. The Roswell incident has nothing to do with this incident about these British children. They're not connected. You're gonna have to prove them each on their own. And Roswell, I'm sick of Roswell. I find I find the explanations for it that are much more logical. About it being just basically a weather balloon or something like that. I find those things a lot more compelling, and they seem to have a lot more evidence than just everybody who says that they saw the crash and went up to the crash, and everybody who was there has got a story to tell about it. Eyewitnesses are not that reliable, particularly child eyewitnesses, which gets me to the British children they were talking about in the trailer. And there is a line, I think it's in the second trailer, that says well, they all saw something, so it has to be something. It's yeah, kids will say there's a monster under their bed too, and the kid in the bunk bed above it will say, I heard it, or I saw it too. Kids are not reliable. It doesn't matter whether it backs your narrative or not. Kids are not reliable in that way. And to cheapen experts and all these other people who are actually doing actual research with stories about children in Britain that they all have. It seems really silly to me. This seems like kind of a Billy's first UFO documentary where it's going to be all flashy and taken serious, and to take it seriously when it's really just like, yeah, we've heard a lot of these stories before. What is the new evidence? What is the focus of this? And I've actually been really disappointed with. I like that the UFO stuff's getting more into the mainstream. I like that the production value has gone up. But what I've been really disappointed in the stuff that's come out. Even the Bob Lazar documentary that came out, it just seems like the documentary maker was just, I don't know what he finds interesting, but it's not really the questions I would have asked Bob. The old videos and stuff are far of Bob Lazar explaining how the UFOs are built and stuff. That's far more interesting than anything the documentary put together. Oh, it's new evidence. No, it's a new interview of him saying some of the same things and you failing to ask the new questions. So I'm not particularly, let's just say, thrilled with all this new stuff that's been introduced. I think the most compelling stuff that has been introduced is basically the Navy pilots now coming out talking about the stuff they've seen. That's compelling. Can we focus on that? But no, of course not. It's going to be just used as a piece of an anecdote with no explanation in a grander narrative. That doesn't lend any more credibility to essentially the research or the movement. There's also a couple people who are featured in the trailer, let alone in the Tucker had it where there was like a list of people they had talked to, and the Tucker segment isn't online, so I didn't go back and find it. I wasn't able to go back and find it, but he obviously has been given different trailer material than at least what's on YouTube. So they show Bill Richardson. Okay, he talked to Bill Richardson. We've all heard Bill Richardson talk about it again. What has he done different? Is he lending credibility? Has he directed people to has he released documents himself? Has he directed basically the producers to go interview new witnesses who were not previously willing to talk about it? It's just Bill Richardson being Bill Richardson. I get it. This stuff interests him, but you're still a party hack. You were the Democrat governor of New Mexico, didn't do a particularly good job. I think he was Secretary of Energy for like 2 seconds, and just, okay, this is your bag, great. Harry Reid, and I know Tucker said, well, I know he's from the opposition party, but this is a serious person. Well, here's the thing. Harry Reid doesn't have a whole lot of credibility, and he also has very, very poor judgment. And we know this from the things he did in the Senate. He would love his legacy to go down as the guy who was pushing for disclosure, right? He would love that to be his legacy. Because his legacy right now is screwing up the rules of the Senate so that the Republicans can now ram judges through that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. He screwed up the rules of the Senate because he basically didn't, he wanted the power for the Democrats and then it immediately backfired. He would love his legacy to have nothing to do with that. He wants his it would be wonderful for him and his ego and his and his legacy in his head if this was the stuff he was known for favorably rather than the things that he actually did while he was in government. He's trying to say, one of his interviews saying, there's only a tip of the iceberg. Basically, most things that we know haven't been declassified. You're projecting that. He doesn't really have proof of that. He's projecting it. I would like to believe that's true. That's fascinating, right? Oh, there's more evidence, right? It's just right there. It's just still classified. Well, bro, you were a Senate Majority Leader for how long? And you were at the very, very top levels of government. And, are you really surprised the military wasn't just handing you over classified documents so that you can have your UFO hobby? The way they look at it when, basically they're not going to hand over classified information to somebody they despise. The military absolutely hated Harry Reid. Under Bush, they hated him, and pretty much until the purge with Obama, they hated him. Now, he'd probably be a lot more effective in finding this stuff if he was Senate Majority Leader, but his ship sailed. He's gone. He stepped down. because he was a terrible Senate Majority Leader. He also was a terrible senator. He had terrible policies. This is not somebody who is super credible. I get it. It's interesting. He's got the title, but he's still a politician. And it's a politician who's been shown to have poor judgment. They also show Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton cited, and since I didn't see any new clips from interviews, they're basically just showing the old interviews where he was talking about, oh yeah, there could be, and oh, there's stuff I can't explain. There's people at the Pentagon who believe it. Like, yeah, he's a personable guy, and if you're interested in that, he's going to talk to you about it, because that's how he's going to get you to like him. Because he's Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton is manipulative and not a good guy. We know that. But he's very personable and he's very convincing, but he's also a liar, He's lied under oath about something completely inconsequential, like things he did in the Oval Office and whatnot, in terms of inconsequential to national security. Why would you think he's telling the truth about, this UFO stuff? Bill Clinton, that doesn't impress me. And the biggest one that doesn't impress me, that I don't know why, this is why if I was Tucker, I wouldn't even have entertained this. They have interviewed John Podesta to add credibility to their story. I can't think of one thing on this earth that credibility is added to by having John Podesta on board. John Podesta is a scumbag. We know this. He's a liar. He's a manipulator. The DNC leaks happened, and then the guy who leaked them ends up dead. And John Podesta's like, I don't know. Oh, I don't know what a pizza party is. Well, we're doing spirit cooking. Like, he's so slimy that to the point where even if there are logical explanations for these things that he's trying to cover up, like, you can't take him seriously. John Podesta is not a credible person. He's not somebody you can include for an interview, And if he is, you could say, okay, we interviewed basically somebody, like, if you're going to interview John Podesta, you have to interview somebody essentially who hates John Podesta, who's now saying the same thing. And they're not. Everybody they've shown so far who are in the government are all Democrat operatives, right? So they would love to be known as the rebels who are pushing, like, this raises their popularity with this community, because they like, oh, trust us, we're the good guys, we're looking for disclosure. Don't ignore all the other stuff we cover up on a daily basis, but trust us on this because we want UFO disclosure. No. This doesn't lend credibility. This is not this doesn't help this doesn't help the cause of the people who want to actually get to the bottom of it. It makes me far more skeptical of the information being presented to me when John Podesta is part of the person who's part of the people who are presenting it. So, okay, I don't know what the motivation of the people making this was. James Fox, explosive documentary being hailed as the most credible examination. No, this means nothing. This means nothing, Senator Harry Reid calls it monumentous. Yeah, he calls it monumentous because it makes him look interesting, Was it Jim Semivan? What was the one other guy? Mellon, who was like assistant deputy defense assistant secretary or something. Like, yeah, okay, cool. So you were that close, but it's not like a secretary of defense coming out. The Canadian Secretary of Defense, I forget what that position is, like it's Ministry of something. He came out and he said there's UFO phenomena we can't explain. Cool, yeah, awesome. He's also convinced that it's alien. Okay, sure, but I'd like to see the evidence of that. But that guy's 1,000 times more credible than, these other people they're touting. They love the attention. They're going to keep digging. They're going to keep acting like, oh, there's something right around the corner that's being covered up, and I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they could believe that, but that doesn't mean it's true, So I see somebody like John Podesta in the mix. It's just like, oh my God, like this sinks the whole thing practically for me, because it's like, all right, you're already covering way too wide of a scope, and then you're framing John Podesta as some sort of credible person on this. He's not credible. And then it makes me sad, because then you've got somebody like, where's he at? Not Reed. Nobody cares about Reed. Okay. They have an interview with Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, and he's pretty sure that basically his concept is essentially He rejects the idea that the Fermi paradox is unsolved, because it has to be, because how can the universe be this big and this expansive and there not be at least another sense of some sort of intelligent life? If there was intelligent life in another galaxy, they probably can if they're that many millions of years ahead of us, they got to be able to travel here. It's fine. I understand what he's saying, but you got to remember, he also doesn't push the one of the most loved and believed conspiracies, that like Apollo 11 had people had ships watching them and stuff. He doesn't believe that. He didn't say, "Oh, I went to the moon and I found a downed alien spacecraft." He's not one of those people. He just believes that the phenomena is real, and he's heard stories like, "Oh, the missile silo is being shut down." Cool. You've said all this stuff. He also died 4 years ago, right? So if they had repackaged it and went and re-interviewed him, cool, right? I mean, I still find that interesting. But he's dead 4 years ago. This movie's coming out now. These interviews weren't done for this movie. This is stuff we've all seen and heard before. They're just going to be using it to, again, piece together whatever the narrative they're selling is, to make the documentary seem exciting. It's fine to do that. It's fine, but let's be honest here. This isn't helping those of us who want to know the truth or get some disclosure, or even really interested in the subject. It's all old hat. So one of the ones is that they're pushing now is that UFOs hovered over nuclear missile sites in Montana and they shut down the sites. Okay, temporarily before they left, right? And then there was one of the things like, oh, they had to be scanning them and getting the specs on them. Why would they need to do that? Why would they need to do that? They're freaking aliens. If they're really that advanced, why would they be scanning it? Shutting it down? Sure. Okay, that makes sense. But also, wouldn't you think the U.S. would be pretty interested in being able to do that? And they can't exactly fly over a missile silo in Russia and test it. Stories about, missiles getting shot down by UFOs. Yeah, testing off the ocean, right? Ballistic missiles. Yeah, I haven't heard anybody, there's been no record of that, and people say, "Oh, were you there for that? The missile exploded. Did you see something shot it down?" There isn't. We may even be too distant from these stories to prove them one way or the other, but that's not new information. It might be new information to people who haven't heard about it before, but it's not presenting anything new, and it's also doesn't explore the possibility that there's other explanations for these kind of things. I'd like to say, if they did a documentary and they just basically were like, okay, we keep hearing these stories from Edgar Mitchell about missile silos being basically shut down by UFOs. Who's left alive who was actually there that we can talk to? What are the documents pertaining to that that exist, whether they're classified or not? And what do people who are skeptical say? What are the people who researched it and came to the conclusion it was something else or inconclusive? What are they saying? Let's examine that story in depth. That to me would be a lot more useful of a documentary to get us new information, or at least new perspectives, than whatever this is going to be, which just seems like just a montage of, we've already heard it before, but now it's got, funky music behind it and how serious it is. I mean, these old guys talking about British children, it doesn't... Oh, no, this guy's the Roswell Army Airfield officer. Yeah, we've heard this before. But, guess what? If it was a government thing, you probably weren't classified to know what it was. Weren't authorized to know what was going on. If it wasn't, I mean, it's weird. We should know. There should be more of these people. The CIA, right? This guy's fine. I've heard him be interviewed before. U.S. Navy pilot. Yeah, U.S. Navy's seeing some weird stuff. I fully believe that. I believe they're seeing stuff they can't explain. In fact, I think the UFOs, the idea of them being hidden in the ocean, is a much more likely explanation. Because if you've got alternate propulsion, something like anti-gravity or 0-point manipulation or something weird like that, right? There's really no difference between a spacecraft and a submarine at that point. So, and if you were going to go hide on planet Earth, where would you hide? You'd hide in the middle of the ocean. If you were going to go visit planet Earth and you knew not much about it, you would want to be able to basically touch down in the water. So even if you couldn't submerge, you would at least want to. That's where you would plan on landing and taking back off from. We're planning to land on Mars, and we're not planning to land in the water there because there isn't an ocean there. But if it was Earth, and suppose we lived on Mars, and we were, suppose somehow we were completely dry, right? Like we didn't need water or whatever, and we were looking at Earth, and we're like, hey, we're gonna land on Earth. We'd be doing a water landing. That's that makes sense to me. But this doesn't. It doesn't seem like they're going to get to any of the plausible hypothesis or anything like that. Let's see. It just doesn't seem real. Like, come on, how many times have we seen this? Oh, it's a headline talking about it. Yeah, it grabs headlines because it's interesting, but that doesn't, putting it in a montage with music doesn't lend any more credibility to it. I don't know. I'm a little disappointed that this is really what we got, right? I mean, it's like, come on. Finally, aerial school sightings get some coverage. Yeah, okay, congrats. You're gonna watch it because it's the aerial school, but it doesn't mean these stories weren't out there. These people, like, everybody wants to know It's not. No, dude, this is not historic. This is not historic. This is the same stuff we've seen, just packaged more mainstream. So that's all. I'm going to actually talk about in another video after this what I actually think, basically, what are the explanations I think that actually could be the case for if these things were out of this world. Or I should say, if these things were, could it be man-made versus out of this world, and how would that work, and why I think those things. I'll make that video next. But right now, I mean, let's be honest, this isn't bringing anything new to the table. It's just reorganizing stuff we already know with a couple interviews from people like Harry Reid and John Podesta, who are not credible in the slightest. So, I guess if you're a diehard Democrat and you think that the Democrats are doing everything right and totally trustworthy, which I don't know anybody who thinks that, then maybe this lends credibility to you. But, I mean, come on. Like, would these same people trust Dick Cheney, right? I mean, if Dick Cheney came out and said, "Oh yeah, there's UFO stuff, and here's the documents, and here's the drop," right? Well, you think these people would all of a sudden being like, "Oh yeah, we totally believe him"? No, they would say, "Oh, what's his motivation?" Especially if he was being dragged. Especially he had just been through an email hacking scandal where stuff that was essentially classified got leaked. He would love nothing more than his legacy to be redefined by something like this. So, I don't buy it. I think Tucker should look elsewhere because it's not. It's just not that. It's not that compelling to me, and it's old hat. Let's talk to the Navy pilots. Let's get to the bottom of that. That's a lot more interesting than just repackage same shit. So, senior intelligence officer. I mean, do we really, guys? Do we trust the CIA? Do we think that CIA always hires people with the best judgment? We can't have it both ways. We can't be like, oh, the government's dumb. Except on this one thing, they're totally competent in covering it up. And they're totally competent in covering up so much information that we've got much bigger fish to fry. The Russia thing's going on. This doesn't add much to the discussion. So that's all for now.